Okay, welcome everybody to DX Leaders 2021, episode 4 on everything you want to know about supply chains and logistics and what's the impact of the so-called C pandemic across that industry. We have fantastic speakers and experts. My name is Lars Födisch. Welcome to today's DX Leaders event, the series about digital transformation, together with my co-host Andreas Enderlin. Andreas, how are you doing today?
Very good, very good. Thank you, Lars. I'm not sitting in Germany as you are, but still enjoying Singapore here. So looking forward to today's session.
Yeah, we have fantastic guests with us today. We have Gino Mazzola, the Managing Director of DSV Air and Sea Singapore and Malaysia. Hi, Gino. Everything all right on your end?
Hey, good afternoon, Lars. Yes, everything fine. Thank you very much.
Then we have, and I should have started with ladies, of course, sorry for that, Lisa Gwen, the co-founder and COO of Xylem. Hi, Lisa. That's a very fancy background. What does it symbolize?
It symbolizes transition and digitization for Xylem. Thanks, Lars.
It seems like you're the perfect guest, like all the others for today. Great background. And last but not least, we have Siva Gunesbaran, the General Manager of Good Singapore. Hi, Siva.
Hi, good afternoon.
Fantastic.
Good morning to you.
So before we start with the webinar, thanks everybody for tuning in. As always, a reminder, please put your questions from the audience into the Q&A section, not the chat function. You can upvote others' question because every episode, and I'm like a broken record, we're running out of time to answer your questions. So we have a few discussion points prepared, but we always want to make sure that it's as relevant as possible for you out there on the other side of the screens and cameras. But before we start, of course, we want to have a look into what is DX Leaders about, because it's in the context of an awards program, right, Andreas?
Absolutely, Lars. And so thank you very much for that introduction. And yeah, just a very short information on the ASEAN Digital Transformation Award. You know, this whole award was set up last year. And if Clarissa would be so kind to press the button so we can move to the next slide. So this was set up last year and in the midst of the pandemic, and we had basically two elements, you know, this award and the DX Leader series that we are having today. And so the goal was really to bring together the ecosystem and make sure that we can reconnect, you know, while we were being separated in our home office. So that was the overall objective of this whole exercise. So we had some really nice applications coming in last year. And, you know, this year, if there are still people around that would like to apply, I mean, the official deadline is over. So the official deadline was on the 12th of September. But, you know, if you're very kind and very swift, you may have to squeeze in. And if you want to, you know, still participate, you can talk to Andrea and Clarissa. And you will still be part of that exercise. So that's really a nice opportunity for everybody out there. Either you're an MNC, an SME, or a startup. In either case, you can participate. So one further, Clarissa. Okay, so just very quickly. Above everything, a big thank you about on our sponsors, you know, DSV as being part also of today's webinar. So Gino, thank you very much for the support. We also have a lot of other supporters, so Kronig, NCR, Inventa, RIB6, and Zulke. Big thank you. Without you, it wouldn't be possible. And then obviously we have the ecosystem. And so this award and all the initiatives that we're doing in digital is initiated by the Swiss Cham, but it's really anchored in the ecosystem here. So as you can see, it's broadly supported by a lot of the chambers, Swiss chambers in the region, but also French chamber, Spanish cham, the Germans, American chamber. So we're very glad to have them on board and get all the support. And as you can see here, these are the subcategories. So if you're out there, and you see a subcategory that you're interested, reach out to Clarissa and Andrea, and we might still consider you. So one further, Clarissa. Okay, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but basically it's two phases. So it's basically the online application, as mentioned. It is really now, if you still want to apply, it's time to hand in your application. Then the private pitching session will happen to basically bring down the number of applications to a manageable level. And then we will go into public pitching sessions where you will be able to pitch to experts, our jury, but also to the world, basically, what you have done in terms of digital transformation. So last year, we really had a very global audience, if I may say so, from Europe, from Asia. Very, very happy about that this has really gained a global level. So, and then, we will end up in December with the final winner, and maybe it's going to be a hybrid event. We are crossing our fingers, but we just don't know, and we will announce it as soon as we know. All right, so let's go one further. And obviously you will ask yourself, so how is this assessed? Very objectively, I can tell you. So we have been working with Deloitte on a maturity model to assess, digital transformation initiatives very broadly. So touching on strategy, customer, culture, operations, technology. So it's a very broad assessment, but it's very objective. And I think this should be motivation enough for you to participate. All right, one further, Clarissa. So what's in it for you? As I mentioned, recognition, I think, is very important. Best practice exchange, as we're having today, learn from the best. Then prices are out there as well. It should not be your own, your only motivation. But I think if I'm listening to past participants, really the network, this is what made the big difference. It's really about accessing new clients. It's about getting an understanding of, what is really out there in terms of thought leadership. And so I think if you want to participate, it's a great opportunity to reach out to Clarissa and Andrea and get your application going. With this, back to you, Lars.
Thank you. And as always, to get started on the topic, we'll have a poll for the audience. So please get ready to click away. And the question today, and if we can have the poll already fired up, is: what's the weakest link in digitized supply chain ecosystems today? We know it's not an exclusive list, but we want to get an idea on where does your thinking stand? What's your point of view? What's the weakest link in digitized supply chain ecosystems today? Cybersecurity? Is it legacy systems? Is it data silos or people? And if there's any indication from our previous episodes on digital transformation, it's a good mix usually of all of the above, independent of the vertical, but it always goes down to people usually, right, Andreas?
Oh, absolutely. And it's always easy to blame people, right? So let's see what comes out.
Good. Let's give it 5 more seconds for the last clicks. 3, 2, 1. Let's close the poll. And right after, then we'll have Gino taking it away with an introduction keynote on the topic. Gino, if you would have to pick one out of the 4, what would have been your pick?
On the people.
People, what a surprise. Managing companies would be so easy if it wasn't for the people, right? No.
And then we have
good. Let's have a look at the results. And it is people, surprise, nearly 50%, followed by cybersecurity. Everything else, data silos, doesn't seem to be a problem. Just quick round robin. Lisa, surprise for you on the results, or you would have predicted that?
Definitely not a surprise. I know that people are fear of change. So therefore, we need to get outside of our comfort zone. And if we remove the comfort zone, then there's none. So it's up to us to remove that comfort zone and just step ahead.
Good. And Siva, you would have picked people as well?
Yep. That's something I'm going to share a little bit more later as well, hopefully. But yeah, people is definitely a key element to this.
Fantastic. You know, it's a typical saying, like everybody likes change as long as it doesn't affect themselves. Okay, but we are going over to Gino now, and with a few introductory words on the topic. How has the big pandemic that came upon us changed the ecosystem of supply chain and logistics? Gino, please. Curious to hear your thoughts and insights.
Okay, to start with, I mean, my name is Gino. I'm the managing director of DSV, and I'm happy to have the opportunity to address it here. So let me dive right into the subject. What is digital transformation? Whatever you Google or search for, at the end is being described as the process of fundamentally changing anything utilizing digital technology. It refers to the use of technology and perhaps cultural shifts to better or replace what was previously available. The concept of digital transformation refers to the implementation of new technologies in areas of a company to improve its efficiency. Thus, digitalization in logistics constitutes the integration of new digital capabilities in fields such as storage, order preparation, and transportation, among others. The practice of utilizing technology to enhance corporate processes is known as digitalization. The process of transforming information from a physical format to a digital version is known as digitation. In a nutshell, digitation relates to information, whereas digitalization relates to processes. Today, all logistics companies are faced with both challenges: transforming the data into digital version and making use of technologies. Unfortunately, each subsector of logistics is having different priorities and targets. If you're talking about real-time data, this is being used by carriers, both by air and by sea, trucking companies as well, to improve on speed and to avoid delays. Cloud-based computing has been used for warehouse operations to improve and optimize accuracy and inventory. Web analytics to understand customer and competitors, and customer relationship management tools to improve on the client experience. These are just a few examples of the challenges the logistics industry is faced with, and due to the pandemic, it is putting more pressure to deliver better, more efficient and reliable services. We at DSV believe that it is important to have a seat at the table when the future in digitalization in freight and logistics is decided. Digital transformation is no longer an accessorial option, but those going into transformation are the ones that will stay ahead of the game. We are committed to innovation. The DSV Innovation Hub helps to embrace digital transformation by implementing digital solutions for the core business, the adjacent business, as well as creating new digital business. In today's area of volatility, there is no other way but to adopt digital transformation. I took some time to do a small research and to get items in. I think it is very important to understand digital transformation in a sense that it comprises of two parts. One is, as I said before, the digitation of the information, whereas the process at the end of changing and bringing in new items is the digitalization. I wanted to keep it rather short to allow for more questions and items to be coming up and to see what it is. The subject of logistics, transformation, supply chain solutions is so big that we have to break it down, that we have said that there are so many subcategories, transportation, trucking, customs clearance, documentation, trade, and everything else, that it is too big of an item to eat by one. When we are looking at startup companies, they focus on a subcategory and sometimes even only a part of the subcategory. It will take some time until we're reaching a better level of digitalization in the supply chain and logistics, but we have to start, and we see more and more happening, and we are happy to be part of it. Thank you, Lars.
Thank you, Gino. Thanks for sharing your insights from an industry leader perspective and how your company is tackling this topic. I think Andreas is burning to fire away the first questions.
Yeah, so Gino, thanks very much for your introduction. And, you know, I mean, with your 30 years of experience in Europe and in Asia, I think one of the burning questions I would have is, you have been working on different continents, and now we are here in a thriving, dynamic region called ASEAN, right? And we all have, you know, we have all seen all these headlines around China, trade war, and then also disintegration of supply chains and everything, right? And then now also with the pandemic that, you know, it's been a big challenge for all the supply chains globally. But if you had to pinpoint, you know, the key differences between ASEAN and an emerging market and the challenge that you have versus a developed market like, let's say, Germany or France or continental Europe, if you wish, what would these key differences be from your experience?
Thank you for the question, Andreas. One of the items that has been coming up before and was addressed before, and everybody has slightly a different interpretation. For me, from our side, the key difference between, how to say, an emerging market and an established market is the investment that the government is doing, the dedication on some of the trades, conditions, infrastructure. You can have all the digitalization in the world. If you're sitting in a country with bad road networks, not operating ports, be it airports or seaports, it doesn't help. It has to be hand in hand. Government, I mean, again, being in Singapore is a very nice experience. The government is helping on the trade, is closing certain barriers, opening up the country, allowing for investment, development, reducing burdens in customs, in duties, and everything else that helps. Whereas other countries, for different reasons, have to put up protectionism. We see the changes again on country level. To me, that is the biggest influence these days, whereas a developed nation is continuously developing and investing infrastructure, training, development of the people, schooling, education, whereas emerging market has different priorities.
Yeah. And what would be these priorities? I mean, if you're from your experience in an emerging market.
In an emerging market,
let's take Indonesia.
Indonesia. Well, Indonesia is a challenging area because you have all the different, how to say, you have one or two main islands that are accessible, that are possible to be done. But then how do you do your logistics or your transportation into the remaining 9,000 or 12,000, depending on who you're talking to, islands and everything else? You have to take care of certain items. Again, looking on the income, looking on the development. How do you invest the money? What is first priority? At the moment, a lot of it is, of course, on the medical side and less on the infrastructure side. Education, development. When we see universities in Singapore getting better and better, competing with the Europeans and with the Americans, everybody else is, I don't say second fiddle, difficult to catch up. And we can see, taking Australia into that game as well, how they have developed their country and their education to bring the people on a different level. Key is continuously developing.
Okay. Something you can echo, Siva and Lisa?
Yeah. I mean, Gino's been around much longer than all of us. Thank
you.
my experience is mostly in Singapore, but I do agree. I think the levels of adoption and issues faced by this different set of countries are very, very different.
Yeah, foundation is the policy. So if the government relax the policy or change the policy, then we can execute it on the ground. So it is up to them to be, like Gino said, and it's up to them to relax and change the policy for us.
So if I may say a bit provocatively, is it more about fixing the basics? I mean, talking about, emerging countries. I mean, if I think about pre-COVID, when I was traveling to Vietnam, if you are traveling outside of Ho Chi Minh at the wrong time, you get stuck in traffic. So it's basically not so much about digital transformation. It's also setting in place, the basics, that actually the roads and the infrastructure is there to ensure that you can actually deliver goods from A to B in a meaningful time, right?
Correct.
I
don't think it's rocket science. It's just a matter of I think whoever's running the show, how serious you take this portion of it. I think if you have different priorities, maybe so. But if you take this seriously, then what are you going to do to really make it happen within a space of time?
Maybe let's have a look at from a different perspective, right? Infrastructure, long-term, massive investment needed, and there's only that much we as individual players can do it. So it's very much a state level. But digital transformation, every company can play its own role, but at the same time, it's an ecosystem play. So Siva, maybe with your background on helping businesses optimize and transform processes through technology. Two double question. One is, how has COVID changed what you're doing with businesses, if at all? Second, and I don't want to go into their different levels of development kind of things, but how do you help companies, especially in an ecosystem that is so diverse, to really have processes that go beyond the gate of their company? Okay.
So I think the adoption of technology or digitalization in the logistics sector was, I think pre-COVID, it wasn't that great. I think everybody was very comfortable. We had enough resources. Logistics companies especially had people around. So when I have 10 people to do that job, technology solution was a by the way or an alternative or something good to have, not a must have. But with COVID right now happening, and you either work from home if you're lucky, and in some companies where you're not that lucky, you have to downsize or manage your cost. I think companies have to do more with less. And with that happening, what has happened is I think they're more open to technology solutions. So how can tech solutions, things that we do, I think ourselves, Xylem, we have different suites of solutions across the whole supply chain. And I think people are a bit more open. It's not very easy still, I would say. I think it's still a process, but the acceptance, the willingness to listen and to explore and to invest your own time to find ways to work, I think it's a bit more better right now. Because I think maybe Lisa, you could share your thoughts later as well on this. A technology provider can bring the right solutions to you, but I think every company, every business is different. So it has to be a hand-holding exercise between us, the solutions provider, and the customers, and like a logistics, for example, DSV, with DSV's customers themselves, it has to be a handshake between all parties to really make it work. And we have done some projects with DSV over the years. I think the team has been very supportive, and that kind of helped us to even implement the solutions. Because if all the hands do not, move in a synchronous manner, it's going to be very difficult to implement.
Yeah, nobody wants to, like that white elephant in the room, or, spent on technology is one thing, but if you don't get it to action and implement and have people use it, that's normally where it stops. Right. So Lisa, then maybe over to your side. You've worked across the globe, US, APAC. How do you see technology transformation from your perspective going? What are the main hurdles basically, and what's the quick fix to overcome them, if there is one?
Yeah, I think, to give credit to enterprises, it's not easy to digitize, and it's also not easy to transform. And what we're asking them to do is not an easy job at all. So we need to recognize that. So as a technology enabler, we need to also share with them best practice. So we don't go in and we just implement, but we share with them best practice in regards of, so they can make the right decision. What we find that is easier for the enterprise is to help them through that journey, and it is a journey. It's not something that you can call it one project and you're done. It is actually a journey. You need to look at their problem and break it out for them. You know, every single operation has a start point. Every single start point has a connecting point. It is our job to make sure that the customer is going to the right connecting point, to the finish line, and not let them deviate and go to, you know, other path that will not get them there. And that's very easy, because with logistics, it's very complicated, number one. And number two, there's exceptions everywhere. It is our job to manage and really tell them where to focus and what exception is the right one to implement and which one are the opportunity for them to remove.
So then, and I've worked also in the logistics industry before, so I'm just asking, would one of the biggest possibilities for failure be that there are not enough exceptions implemented, and then people basically bypass the digital systems, like in the first wave of CRM systems? Everybody did the sales job as possible, and then at the end of the month, they put the leads in there as an alibi function and hit their quota. Is that a problem in the supply chain business?
Actually, you will see it in both ends. You will see someone that would take a solution and compromise, therefore it becomes a failure at the end. So you don't want to compromise your operation through the adoption of a technology solution. But you also don't want to take a solution and really focus on the 10% or the 2% of your exception. So it is really that balance that you really need to focus on. Number one, what is crucial for your operation? And number two, what are necessary and things that you don't compromise. But as Selva mentioned earlier, it's about the solution that will allow you to have handshake with your whole end-to-end ecosystem as well. So the solution itself doesn't have to give you all of the answer, but the solution itself needs to be scalable for it to talk to other applications as well.
Okay, I think one interesting point, Lisa, that you raised during the briefing, and it just stuck with me, because we all talk about digital transformation, but you were actually saying it's actually more about the business transformation, right? It's more about how do you kind of help people to change their behavior, how they work, right? And the same counts for the supply chain, which is, you know, sometimes very disintegrated, and you have very different parties that work alongside. And you were mentioning about, you know, Indonesia and customs clearance, that this is still a big challenge, right? So what was your, how would you explain, you know, your statement about transformation?
Yeah, I think for a company that is successful with transformation, or even took the gut to start to transform, is really to look at what they have to redefine what are norms, and what they have to redefine in regards of what do they expect their people to do, and what do they expect for the management team to equip them with tools to do. And I think that is the hardest part, because many of my customer runs their business for 50 years, actually 100 years, and they really rely on certain resources with certain expertise, and there is nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, as human, we can only scale as much. So they need to also let go of some of those experience, find a solution that can help them scale. And that's, once they have that trust in the solution, they will see that it's much easier for them to transform. You know, planning a next day delivery is different from planning a 2 hours delivery. And there is no superhuman that can take 500 orders and plan for 2 hours delivery and still optimize your operation. You will rely on the resource for the areas of expertise, but you should rely on the solution to give you that systematic, instant calculation of the dynamic routes, and then give you that answer in minutes instead of hours. So I think it is up to the enterprise, and then more importantly, the management team, to let go of certain decision and bring it to the solution instead of their resource.
Let's talk then to the client management team, and that would be Gino on this call. When it comes to digital transformation projects, is it like, where do you place your bets? Is it a pressure from your customers that said, hey, you're so far behind or you're so far ahead, can you match where we are as customers? Or at the end of the day, they don't give, which word can I use that is appropriate for it? They don't care. Let's use the word. They don't care that much how you are digitally set up, as long as you can get the job done. So where does the pressure for digital transformation come from? And then how does that affect where you place your bets?
We don't gamble. We don't place bets. We are trying to look into the crystal ball and take the right answer out of it. It is difficult to say. I mean, as I said, you have so many subcategories. You have startups coming up and trying to sell you something. You're looking at it, it doesn't make sense for me, but maybe it makes sense for Lisa, or it makes sense for Siva. We're trying to look in the first place, of course, in transportation, in automation, in digitization. I had to learn this, that it is not digital, but we are digitizing the information. We're working with Siva on a separate project, how we can digitize more. Today, the biggest challenge is that me as a customer, I don't want, for whatever reason, our IT, our corporate IT doesn't allow any integration, any connectivity, any handshake, as we said before. So it means you have the best of the systems, but you still need to print a document, make an attachment to the email, send it to me. I need to open up, I need to print it, then I need to read and copy and paste. Sometimes we can copy paste, sometimes we cannot. Some systems are better than others. We have tried talking to clients and customers, seeing to bring in benefits, money-wise, time-wise, productivity-wise, reliability and correctness. With some it works, but again, with the larger part, it doesn't work. So we're looking from our side how to improve, not to cut an employee, but to improve on the reliability of the information that we get. And we don't want to retype it over and over and over again on the, you've been in the logistics business. You get the instructions, you open the file, you make the customs declaration, you make a delivery or a pickup order. At destination, they have to retype it in, they have to do the customs, they have to make a delivery. So the same information sometimes is being retyped or reused multiple times. We want to eliminate that on every side of aspect that we can. Again, we talked about improving the people skill, customs, regulations. We see Singapore doing a lot of it that helps logistics companies, shippers, companies to improve. We are looking again where to take the bet. Difficult. Everything is important. Our focus at the moment, at least at DSV, is to digitize as much as we can to move on that. As a second step, to look, as Lisa said, on the trucking side, on the warehouse side, how we can bring in digital capabilities, digital technologies to help us.
Okay. So obviously, Gino, and also to Siva and Lisa, this is all, you know, connected to cost, right? So from an entrepreneur, and let's take let's take the perspective of an SME entrepreneur, because we have a lot of SMEs here, right? So they look at their logistics setup. They have the question, you know, do I insource, do I outsource, and so on? Do I invest into digital transformation, into tools? So how do you explain to your customers, you know, a return on investment, and how, you know, do you convince them? Because often it's a quite significant upfront investment.
True. I think you mentioned the right word there, upfront investment. We've been in this space for many years now. I think since 2013 we've been doing this. I do agree that in the initial stages, most of the technology solutions were built on a SI, I'll call it the SI model, whereby you pay for a whole solution. But over the years, what has happened is there's been a lot of new companies coming up, startups, tech companies, which has changed the landscape. You see a lot of cloud-based solutions right now, which is cheap, I would say, compared to, you know, doing a one-time capex investment. Even in our business today, a lot of our services is more on a pay-as-you-use basis. So instead of charging a huge capex, we know that there is larger MNCs who have higher utilization. For example, digitization of documents. The MNCs would digitize more, an SME would do less. So instead of charging all of them a fixed fee, what we do is you go by, you know, the usage and stuff like that. So I think what customers need to do is just go down a bit deeper and do a bit of research, and you'll find a lot of cost-effective solutions, and then tie that back to your TCO ROI and figure out what works best.
Yeah. But then obviously the next question would be how flexible and how customizable is that solution, right? And how can I really map my processes to that solution? Is that something where startups are still very flexible? That's maybe a question to Lisa.
Yeah, I think startups today need to be flexible. So because the world keep on changing and the business problem also change as well. So if you don't have that as a foundation, then you will fail as a product team. But to add on is it's really not about the return on investment actually. For me, when I talk to the C-levels of my customer, I really focus on new revenue. It's not about return on investment, because return on investment, to be honest, is just a one-time that you can, I would say, justify. But for us as a job for a technology enabler is to bring them to the competition and let them win by having new revenue. So we really focus on what new revenue we can bring to our customer. So for example, if you want to compete with Amazon 2 hours delivery window, that's new revenue. That's the stream of revenue, and that's an unknown stream of revenue. So, you know, we have customer that transform from B2B to B2C. It's not about ROI. So that's really my focus when I work with customer, is really about, not about savings, it's about what new revenue I can bring to the table.
Yeah, but that depends though. I think both are acceptable. I mean, different companies have different priorities. I think a company that is fast growing, you're looking at new business revenues, but you do have a lot of mature companies in which when you're challenged with higher increasing cost, then, you know, some of these solutions are more focused on helping you find cheaper, better, more cost-effective ways to run your operations and manage. So I think, yeah, we have two different spectrums to look at.
Let's ask them a money question to jump in.
It's still a money question.
So has traditionally an ROI model goes a little bit about TCO, right? Total cost of ownership versus investment versus returns. So now with more and more SaaS models, we can bring upfront investments massively down. Your CapEx impact is much lower. Does that lead to faster adaptation, or also for companies to lose sight a little bit because I sign up for this. It doesn't have the big upfront $200,000 investment, but over 5 years, I might actually spend 10x on what I would normally have budgeted for it. Gino, I'll have to do that for that because you are you would be the man who would have to approve the budgets.
Again, it's funny that you bring that up. I mean, we had discussions also with Siva when we did our, customs integration, and just recently our, platform with electronic proof of deliveries, when the truck driver goes out and he scans and he signs and he gets the signature, like you've seen with UPS and DHL for a long time, bringing it down to a different level. We actually didn't talk too much about the money because we wanted to have a solution. There is no escape. You need to embrace it. The longer you put it out, the longer it will take to catch up. On some items, yes, you spent 10 years ago a lot of money to have that, which today you can do for, I'm not saying a few cents, it still takes money, but it is much faster, much easier. Would you sign up? Would you do? Talk to Siva. He convinced me to sign up and to pay for it, to go for it. And we have one subject or one project. The second project is finished. We're working on the third one to see how we can further develop and to do. As I said, unless somebody comes up, as we said before, specific client dedicated with your company system costs a fortune. Nobody's going to pay the 200,000, 500,000 startup and everything else to do so. Clients are also not willing to pay that kind of money and then eternally to be bound to you no matter what. They want faster, easier. In today's technology and digital items that you are available, it is easy. It can be done. You can change, you can switch, you can do. We are fine. We're looking constantly at ways to improve and how we can do, and you have to sign up.
Okay, so then maybe let's direct the question with a twist to the two persons more on the vendor supplier consulting table. With money not seem to be the massive issue of getting people signed up, do you then sometimes see the other side where people or clients sign up too quickly because money doesn't seem to be the burden? They know they have to do something, but then it's just a sign up and top management says, but then implementation lags behind.
Lisa, you want to start first? Ladies first, I'll answer after you.
I like it. It is. I think if there's already a need, they will sign up, but I believe that the challenge is the change management and really taking, because it's not about the solution, it's about how to implement with the least interruption to your day-to-day operation, because you don't stop operation to implement any solution. And I would say, the hiccups are number one, the change management. Number two, the ability for you to strategize and phase approach. Really strategically, how do you implement and not interrupt the operation? And I would say it is up to the vendor and the enterprise to make sure that the user adoptions continue. That is it, because if you have a fancy tool and you don't have anybody who wants to use it, or they don't like it, and you don't follow up, the user adoption will decrease, and all of your investment, whether you put a penny or $100,000, will be gone. All of that effort will be gone.
Yeah. I think for us, it's more towards the customers we deal with. So for good, our customers are mostly enterprises, SMEs and large enterprises. So there is no such thing as a sign up and not being used. I don't think you and Gino would sign something and they say, okay, guys, just sign it for the sake of it. But what we look at really is we spend a lot of time really speaking, like, for example, with Gino, it's not about something that he needs today, but it's more about, what does DSV as a company is looking to do in the next 3-5 years. And then we benchmark that against all our other potential customers. And if we feel that this is something that is really needed for the future of the industry, we do spend the time and effort, and hopefully it can be something that we can scale, because when you're able to scale that product and each customer pays a fraction of the price for it, we benefit, and everybody else who is using it benefits as well. So that's the approach that we go with. Yeah.
Okay. So I would have, I think, one last question, Lars, before we go to the rapid fire, but I have to ask that because it's out there, right? So the theme around sustainability and the impact on the supply chain. Do you get this feeling that it's really becoming critical? I mean, talking about CO2 footprint, are your customers coming to you and say, hey, I am concerned about my supply chain. Can you help me in implementing my sustainability targets? Is that something that is really happening?
Let me jump in on this one. Yes, it is. Yes, we have questions. Yes, we're looking with clients and customers how we can improve. Again, a big portion has to deal with it. Are you a developed country or are you an emerging market? In developed countries, predominantly Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, here in Asia, companies will ask, companies will do. We have some of our retail clients and customers that are looking how we can do events or carbon-friendly deliveries by truck. On ocean and air, we're looking as well to minimize the CO2 emissions. We have different tools to measure, to calculate how to offset and what to do. It is something that is coming up, and it is something that is more and more requested by clients as DSV. We have signed up with various institutions. DSV took over from Panalpina on a carbon neutrality and is pushing it through because it is important that we are looking at it, because we can contribute. We really can contribute because we have one of the key items, the transportation, under our control, and we can, together with our partners, see that we can make investments and reductions.
Okay, maybe a quick one, Siva, Lisa, you get this sustainability question?
Yeah. I think for us, because we're more into one of our core business is the permit declaration space, and you know that to do one customs permit for one shipment, the invoice could be as thick as 500 pages. And traditionally, what people do is what Gino mentioned is everybody prints that whole stack out and then send it to the next person to declare. But with this kind of partnerships, what we've been able to help is to just remove that whole printing completely and move the data within the system itself, digitize it and simplify. That helps. And I think from the trucking space, the events and all I would say it's the demand isn't super. It's not that everybody's asking for it, but I think it's on the right track. It's starting to pick up momentum, and it's going to go the right way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for us, it's all about the operation efficiency. So we're able to remove all of the paper trail, internal paper trail within the operation, from expense, check-in, check-out, any paperwork that you need the client to sign, we were able to remove that. And then also efficiency in the route, right? So to reduce the driving mileage for the customer, to optimize their route, sequence it properly without jeopardizing the SLA of the deliveries. Yeah, it is definitely a focus. Fuel is also increasing as well. So it's also a focus for many of my clients to make sure that the route is very optimized.
Okay, one quick rapid fire question. We have already the audience questions coming up in the Q&A. And everybody just a quick one sentence answer. Do you believe that accelerated digital transformation will help smaller players to close the gap to the big logistics players? Or digital transformation will help the big players to actually further go away and widen the gap? So will the gap be smaller or bigger because of digital transformation between big global players and medium and smaller players?
One word answer, smaller.
Smallers will catch up.
Yeah, no, I don't think they will catch up. They will continue to be there. They will continue to go into certain niches, but more challenging to catch up to the big ones.
Okay, Lisa?
Yeah, I'm with Gino, because as much as we want the SME to really, reduce it, I think that there is going to be further challenges. So it doesn't really help reduce, but it does help them in their own business. But I don't know about the reduction.
Yeah, because I just feel that smaller companies, they're more nimble and it's easier to change compared to a large corporate, a large giant. I mean, I go on that approach. So I find it's easier for them if they want to, they could just easily flip and move. Yeah.
Okay.
And you're absolutely right with that. They can flip, they can change, they can make, they can do. But the question is, can they catch up to the big ones? And the gap from a number 1 to a number 20 is massive these days.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there is also consolidation happening, right, Gino? I mean, as you...
Well, of course, we are in the middle of our integration. DSV finished the takeover on all levels with a company called GIL, Global Integrated Logistics, part of Agility. And we're now in the discussion to integrate and to do, and that will continue. Everybody's buying, everybody's consolidating, everybody's getting stronger and trying to seek where there are certain weak spots or weak links in your own organization and try to buy somebody to fill that gap.
Okay. Let's move over to the questions from the audience. We're directly starting with Tim Wiringa. He was the first one posting today. The question is, how would you describe the right leadership style that facilitates digital transformation? What does a leader need to do or stop doing to create a fertile space for change. And I love it because it's, we're moving away from infrastructure, we're moving away from just processes or technology. It's the leadership question. So who want to take that one on?
Let me jump in. I like the one when we had the discussion with Lisa. To me, the one that will be leading that is the one that is able to bring in the cultural shifts. As we said, where there is a lot of old items that people don't want to change. If you can overcome that, if you can make the cultural change, that will be, to me, the game changer.
So Gino, can you bring in an example? Because we were saying, or Lars was saying, it's actually, everybody likes change unless it's about them. Can you bring an example from your own career where you had to change and become a digital leader?
Well, we have been looking at it. I mean, as we said, we had the discussions with good on various items and levels. When I started in Singapore 3.5 years ago, everything was manually done. We didn't have, and we were looking into the market, and we came upon good Siva and the people, and we had a discussion. And the way he showed what they can do and how they can do, I was hooked. I was sold. We implemented. People were coming, yeah, but it costs more money. And you're going, yeah, but don't look at, as what Lisa said before, don't look at the return on an investment. Don't compare, how to say, an apple with a banana or anything else. It's completely different. It's a different change. And did it today? If I'm going and asking, oh, let's save some bucks, let's go back and do it manual. We can take in, well, we can't today, but let's take in some cheap labor from other countries and printing, and don't want to do that because we are fine with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Let's move in the interest of time. Just on this topic, we could expand for a long time. But maybe let's move to the other question from Tilson or Talson Ting. Any suggestion to minimize the port congestion impact to consignee, which caused the delay of arrival? Very in-depth technical question on air freight. So who want to tackle that one? Ocean freight question.
Okay.
Gino.
We had one item that I said during the short introduction. We're looking at talking to everybody to have real-time data, how we can use, what we can do in order to minimize the impact that we know if there is a delay. Let's take an example, flying into Germany because you're in Germany into Frankfurt. If you know that the airport of Frankfurt is closed or congested or has a problem, has COVID or anything else, you try to escape into Munich, you try to fly into Düsseldorf, Hamburg or anything else, as long as you can do that, as long as it is possible. Push comes to shove, you're going to Vienna and taking the train or a car. You're going into Amsterdam and coming in. If you know in advance, you can change and do. The biggest problem is once you're on the way, you can't change anymore. You need to get down in Frankfurt. You need to unload and you're piling it up. And that's the biggest problem, that some of the information is not being used as properly and good as you can. Sometimes you also have restrictions from government that you can't change your flight into Frankfurt suddenly into Munich because of congestion.
I think barring aside physical congestion due to volume and stuff like that, but most of the time the congestion could be due to validations of documents, information. So I think some of the automation solutions which is already there and being implemented in stages, I think it will help because we could start doing the pre-clearance. I think the BLs and all the other documents are all also being automated right now. So it's already moving, probably not implemented as a whole, because sometimes what Gino always tells me that we do everything digitally, and then at the checkpoint you need to print the whole set and give it back to them. What's the purpose, right? So I think it's a phase. It's in the right direction, but it will take a little bit more time for the whole process to be unified.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think
I think
Next
we have another
question,
question, Lars. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Well, Lisa, and then you'll take the last one, okay?
Oh, no.
I think it's very much directed at Lisa, I would guess. Anonymous, but I'm curious about how can companies leverage crowdsourcing as a tool for bolstering last mile delivery? I think you might have an opinion on that.
Yeah, definitely there's a pros and cons of crowdsourcing. I think the pros is the ability to book and to activate a person to do the delivery. And I would say the risk that you have there, if you don't have the right tool, is the ability for you to measure your service quality, right? So it's an unfamiliar driver, it's unfamiliar partnership, it's crowdsourced. So when you go out of network and you allow crowdsourcing, then you need to focus on having the ability to measure the service SLA and the quality of your service, because at the end of the day, that driver represents you and your company.
Yeah, very, very good point, fair point. Yeah.
Yeah. One last one, maybe. It's about reshoring. So do you think that globalization is being reversed? You know, looking back at the last couple of months and what's happening, I know it's a big question, but can you hear from your clients that they actually want to contain their supply chains and not make them too global because of all the risks?
Maybe Gino, you answer
it. To me, it's one of these evergreens. Being around, as somebody said, for a long time. It's coming up every couple of years where companies are saying we do reshoring, we have problems flying into China, we don't get the visa, we have problems, we have this, we have that, and we want to do it then in Eastern Europe. Well, actually, by the time you're taking a car or a plane or a train into Eastern Europe, you might also fly as well the 10, 12 hours into China and might be faster. It remains to be seen what the people want. As we said before, everybody wants to go back to nature, but nobody wants to walk. Everybody wants to drive. That's, to me, the biggest challenge that we have and that we see, that it's nice and it's good, but at the end of the day, people are not willing to pay the money that onshoring, reshoring is going to do, because you can still do it cheaper in China or in Vietnam, including the shipping and transportation.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me, I think
Siva?
globalization is going to stay. It's going to get even bigger, but you can now do it from where you're sitting in your room, actually, in your boxes or stuff. Because what COVID has actually taught us, me personally, is you don't have to fly everywhere. You don't have to be everywhere to make things happen. There are lots of tools right now that, you know, Zoom and Teams and stuff like that. So you could be doing whatever you're doing from your own comfort zone. So I don't see globalization being reversed. I think it's going to go, but at a different way. Maybe the method is going to change, but it's still going to be there. Yeah.
Hey, and we'll keep back from calling you out to stand up to check if you're in your boxes or not. But I think we still have a few questions, but in the interest of time, I think we have to wrap it up. Thank you very, very much. Some of the quotes we collected today was from Siva saying pre-COVID tech solutions were good to have, but with COVID, with work from home, a lot of downsizing, you need to do more with less. It's all about having the right solution that will provide a handshake between parties to make things work. So it can never be fully isolated. We had Lisa saying, of course, startups need to be flexible as the world keeps on changing, and you need to roll along with it or lose the game, right? Constant change, that's the nature of a startup business. And as a tech enabler, you have to share the best practices to businesses and can make the right decision. You have to help them throughout the journey. It's not a one-off project that's done. It's never just a one-off project. It's never, you know, buy a solution in a box, put it in a server, and it will change the process. And from Gino, we learned that digitization is all about the information. Digitalization is all about the digitation. Digitation is all about the info. Digitalization is all about the process. So, you know, but it's overall transformation is no longer an accessory option. in supply chains, it's really about the differentiator between those that will stay ahead of the game, right? It's not an option if you want to be successful. And of course, we all talked a lot about differences between emerging and developed markets. I think that's that topic alone. Maybe we'll address it next week, no, in 2 weeks, because episode 5 of this season will be about the crossroads of technology, urbanization, and infrastructure development. So I think we'll hear a little bit about those differences between developed and developing markets, especially in Southeast Asia. That was episode 4 of DX Leaders. Thank you so much, Gino. Thank you, Siva. Thank you, Lisa. And of course, Andreas, sharp and smart as always. Big shout out before the video starts, please, to our sponsors. Of course, this webinar series is brought to you by Deloitte and SwissGem, and today, especially with the support of DSV. My name is Lars, signing off. Have a wonderful day, stay safe, and make supply chains happen today. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.